Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the procedural vote to repeal Obamacare without a replacement will be early next week. Already, it is expected to fail. Now, the president is blaming anyone and everyone other than himself for the failure of one of his biggest campaign promises. CNN's Erin Murray is live at the White House with the latest. So the president was very vocal about his disappointment on health care earlier today. What are you hearing from the White House tonight?
Well, that's right. It was a defeat that took the White House by surprise. There were certainly staffers in the White House who were feeling dejected by it, and President Trump was pretty forthcoming about the fact that this is not the outcome that he was looking for. Here's what he said today.
I don't think it's dead, no, but I'm certainly disappointed. For 7 years I've been hearing repeal and replace from Congress, and I've been hearing it loud and strong, and then when we finally get a chance to repeal and replace, they don't take advantage of it, so that's disappointing. So I'm I would say I'm disappointed in what took place. It will go on and we'll win.
Now, on top of saying he's disappointed, it's worth noting President Trump also said this is not on me in terms of the failure of this health care bill, and we're just going to stand by and let Obamacare collapse. That was his message today, Anderson.
The White House invited all Republican senators to lunch tomorrow. Is this the agenda, or do we know?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this meeting. It's also worth noting, Anderson, like you said, it's Republican senators. Earlier today, we saw Sarah Huckabee Sanders go to the podium and say, you know, hey, we're willing to move forward on this on a bipartisan basis. We want Democrats to come to the table. The reality is the White House has not necessarily tried to engage Democrats on this. They've still tried to move forward on a repeal plan, which is something they know Democrats are not ever going to show up and work with them on. So I think everyone is sort of wondering what the next step is on this as the Senate realizes there aren't the votes there to move with a straight repeal. There were not the votes to move with their repeal and replace plan. I think everyone's kind of going back to the drawing board and saying, what can we do about this thing that we have been campaigning on for 7 years?
Sarah Murray. Sarah, thanks very much. Republican Governor of Ohio John Kasich has long been an outspoken voice on health care reform, a strong critic of efforts to cut Medicaid benefits. I spoke to him earlier today before I could find my glasses. Governor Kasich, when you hear the president say, as he did today, that his plan is now to, quote, let Obamacare fail, is that an option?
No, I really don't think it is, and I'm not sure that's what he really means. I've always believed that he's not hung up on some ideological fix on this. That's my view, that if they were able to give him something that stabilized the insurance markets, began to deal with the problems of rising health care costs, I think he'd sign it. Anderson, I mean, what the focus has to be, and it's something I suggested, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months ago, the focus ought to be on stabling those insurance markets on the exchange so that people can get health insurance. And then we need to move beyond that and think about what insurance is all about. What is the risk we're trying to cover? What are the responsibilities of people aside from those risks that we cover on insurance? And then I also think, Anderson, that we need to look at all these entitlement programs, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and we ought to put them on a roadmap to stability. They ought to be reformed. And that would include everything that we talk about on Medicaid, but it has to be done with both parties or you'll never get it done.
But, you know, the president also said today, I'm not going to own it. I can tell you the Republicans are not going to own it. I mean, to you, does it sound, I mean, it seems like a lot of folks are still trying to blame one or another side, whether it's Democrats blaming Republicans or Republicans blaming Democrats.
Well, I heard Schumer today say, well, these are the conditions for us to be able to do something. A, we have a lot of people who are in need of continuing health care. We need people to be treated. We need them to get primary care. We don't need to put them in the emergency room. We don't want them to live paycheck to paycheck worrying about the fact that if they don't have health care, they could be bankrupted. And these are people who play by the rules. So I think it is possible. I know it's possible to get a bipartisan group of senators to say, let's first stabilize the insurance markets. Let's make sure that people can get the kind of coverage they need to have a healthier America.
But there's been so much talk of just letting, I mean, the Republicans have been saying, look, that Obamacare is collapsing and to just let it collapse. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, said today he wants to hold a repeal-only vote in the near future. And as you know, Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito said that she didn't come to Washington to hurt people. Would a repeal without replacement hurt people?
No, repeal's not acceptable. Of course, you'd have lots of people that would lose health insurance. I don't think it would be good for the country. I don't think it would be good for the party. I don't think it'd be good for anybody who's down there in Congress.
And I mean, you talk to a lot of folks on Capitol Hill, and obviously a lot of governors. You think there are enough Democrats, enough Republicans willing to work with each other in a bipartisan way?
I do. You know, sometimes, though, they want to ask permission from their leadership. Like, I need to ask. Like, you know, I need to have a hall pass. Do I have to ask the teacher? I mean, that's a frustrating thing for me. You know, when I was in the Congress, I was offering budgets against a Republican president of the United States because I didn't think he was saving enough money. I became the chairman of the Budget Committee. We balanced the budget. We did it on a bipartisan basis. This is not easy, but, you know, lead when you're there, because at the end, every politician has a million plaques on the wall, okay? You know what you do with those plaques? No one cares. Do something that's going to improve America, not to worry about the party and all this other stuff. Healthcare is so important to every American, and that's why they need to have it.
Governor John Kasich, thanks for being with us.
Okay. Thanks, Anderson.
Back now with our panel, adding in CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Doug Heye. The notion of repealing without replacing, is it, I mean, even if it's possible, is it going to hurt the Republican Party if they do that?
I think it will. I mean, you know, there's no Republican that wants to be in a position where they're going to be blamed for people being thrown off coverage. I mean, the problem is this is an ideological approach that many conservatives would never have signed off on for in the first place. And it was unfortunate that Obama rammed this through on a party line vote, but here we are. And now you have Governor Kasich, you have others who, it's very difficult to take an entitlement away once it's been given, and that's the reality. And so the real challenge now for the president, and I agree with what the governor said, the president was in a very good position as not being very ideological on this question to have really brooked some compromise early on. But Republicans, as Doug and I were saying before, it's Republicans who can't agree on health care when it comes to government being involved. So the challenge for the administration is how do they now work and use their power to try to revive the uncertainty that's in the exchanges in the market?
You're shaking your head.
Obama didn't ram anything through on a party line vote. Okay, so let's just go back to some historical facts. President Obama actually tried to get Republicans in the mix. The basis of Obamacare are exchanges. This was a Heritage Foundation idea. So he really did try to get Republicans on board, and Republicans refused to participate in any way. They decided, as we all know, that they were going to oppose everything that he did. So here we are now, and we have President Trump complaining about the Democrats being obstructionists, when in fact the Democrats were more than willing to work with Republicans. And now there's no reason that when the core of Obamacare are exchanges, which again were developed by the Heritage Foundation, there is no reason that the Republicans cannot come and work with this and find something that would work.
You can't say a party that is based, its slogan right now is resist, wants to work with President Trump on anything. I think actually one of the worst nightmares for the Democrats would be if you just went to regular order, put this through the committees, and started having amendments put on the floor and started looking at the Democrats and say, will you work with us? They're going to get a huge problem from their Bernie single-payer wing of their party that doesn't want to.
No, I've already said that the Democrats aren't interested in repealing Obamacare. What I don't understand is how you can, with a straight face, sit there and complain about obstructionism after what the Republicans did. I mean, it's incredible to listen to people to say the Republicans complain about obstructionism after what we watched. Republicans were in
Republicans were elected to stop Obama.
They literally got together and had a meeting and said, we will oppose every single thing that President Obama does. I'm not even making a partisan point. I'm just really trying to stick to historical facts here. And now you're sitting there complaining about obstruction.
Historical facts. I mean, Democrats to this day still brag about the Medicare Act. They still brag about the Social Security Act, and yet they don't want to. They want to say that President Trump is somehow going to be to blame if Obamacare fails. This is their bill. They passed it. They own it. And I think the president's negotiating, just like if you had a neighborhood and it was going down, the buildings were going down. Think about real estate in President Trump's mind. And the value of the buildings is going down. And I say, I want to buy one. You say no. He goes, okay, well, I'm going to wait till they crater. So the pressure on Congress for how bad Obamacare is clearly isn't enough for them to get their act together.
No.
The president is sitting back and saying, let's wait until it gets even. Wait until the premium increases come out in October.
Donald Trump
may
is
revisit
the president
this entire thing again.
Now he cannot say, I won't own it. You own it the moment that you were inaugurated. You are the president now, and we have to just take a moment and realize how incredible, like staggering it is for him to say, I'm just going to let it collapse. I mean, if you know what? One second. I didn't interrupt you. I'm sorry. I'm going to finish this point. And I want to stop talking about it in policy terms and talk about it in people terms. Collapse, lose coverage. Those are not euphemisms, but they are antiseptic terms. What is going to happen when people lose coverage? People who are healthy get sick. People who are sicker die. And who's sick already get sicker and die. That is what happens when people do not have access to care, cannot afford the care, cannot get in to see a doctor, run out, use up their lifetime limits. This is what happens. This is what happens. People die. And for the President of the United States to simply say, this is a political argument for me. I do not like Obamacare, partly because I don't like Obama. That's what he's saying. And there are a lot of people who voted for him who don't. And I will allow this thing to collapse and allow it to take down the lives of the people who are depending on it.
But Charles, can I ask you a question?
To death.
So protesters that showed up in March and April at congressional offices that was covered all the time, those people think Obamacare is great, so how is it collapsing? Democrat after Democrat has defended Obamacare. The House voted something like 41 times to repeal it. Democrats voted to keep it.
But don't most Democrats will? I mean, most Democrats will say that their things need to be corrected.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's see their plan then. Let's see them come to the White House and say, "Hey, let's sit down, Mr.
But I also
they haven't been invited. They're not going to be allowed to do it.
No.
The left wing of the party is not going to let them do it.
Look, Democrats do have a lot of tension from the Bernie Sanders wing about now moving to single payer. There are things that need to be fixed, Charles. To your point, if we're really talking about people, let's talk about how Obamacare is being implemented. Let's talk about what works. Let's talk about what doesn't work. Unfortunately, I actually think that President Trump would have been much more pragmatic about that if there weren't such disagreement among conservatives. The problem now is part of what is hurting implementation of the Obamacare plan of Affordable Care Act is that Trump and other Republicans have said, look, this is going to crater. We're going to let it collapse. That's not a way to shore up the market. You have the head of CMS. You have Tom Price saying it's failing every day. Now they're under.
Let's talk about it in honest terms. Let's talk about it in honest terms, though. The tension here is between rising costs for some people and the saving of other people's lives. That is the entire tension. And on the campaign trail, people said, I understand that your premiums have gone up, and I will do something about that. Basically, I will cut off access to other people so that I can bring your premiums down. That meant that I will literally let people die in order for you to be more comfortable and be able to make this payment. What we have to say is that if that is the tension, we cannot allow either of those two things to happen. We cannot keep having this conversation as if those two things are disconnected. Those things are absolutely connected. And we have to talk in those terms that we can fix. But we cannot fix to the extent that we allow people to lose coverage and therefore expose people to the possibility that they will get quick and that some of them will die.
I want you guys to be able to respond to that. I just got to take a quick break.